Hey yo, what up guys? It's Kuroki, aka Sab, and this is probably going to be the first and only video that I ever have partially scripted. And some of you are probably wondering from that statement why that is, considering I'm known for my rants, and the answer is very simple. There's literally that much fucked up with weapons to the point I don't have faith in myself to recall most of it off the top of my head, but I still want to give a moderately thorough idea of just how bad this is and why I've decided to just skip finishing the guide. Um, in short, whenever I want to do a guide, it's to thoroughly explain things and why things work a certain way, and based off of changes that were either made unintentionally or in some cases quite intentionally, that broke the understanding that I had of weapons significantly. And so I can no longer actually do a guide. It would just literally just be telling you what the strongest weapons are, and that's it, which is to me completely fucking useless information. There's nothing useful about that sort of information at all. So let me just start off by just describing the actual weapons testing process. If you want to see what I've done, how can I put this? If you want to see what I've seen and fully understand weapons, you have to start with everything off. That means no artifacts, no white sockets, no crit spec into, no loadout with all the combos for the weapons unlocked, but not the mastery point, aka this point right here, not this. Do not spec into that. Once you've done that, you're gonna pick a precision that you want to test at, which is normally you try to have a moderate value so that you can see small differences still, because of the bigger the numbers are, the easier it is to see differences. And you're going to go through and perform 30 to 60 second parses with just weapon taps or weapon hold. That includes lunges and BBs, etc. And obviously weapon combos. You're going to do that on single targets / 3 targets as appropriate for that combo, record all the numbers, then put the mastery point in for each of them, and then go back and repeat that entire process. That process alone is going to take you, assuming you did 60-second parses like me just to be on the safe side, 30 to 60 minutes per weapon. That alone is going to be 7 to 11 hours. And when you do that, you're also going to notice the mastery point makes a lot of shit hit the fan. As a side note, that's 7 to 11 just to get the base parsing down, just the baseline numbers. That's not including going back and redoing and testing different loadouts and rotations. That's where a lot of the extra hours end up coming in, along with if you notice something out of whack, you have to go back and redo a particular weapon attack over and over and over again to get the damage window for it, and then compare it with and without the mastery point. You also have the respec time, you have the time that you actually have to put it inside of the Excel sheet. So all of this stuff ends up adding up. Whenever I say 7 to 11 hours, that's technically just the footage is doing that. That's not talking about going through, making the Excel sheet, organizing it. That's not talking about creating rotations. That's not talking about throwing different power sets in or whatever inside of the mix. There's a lot more that goes into it. That's just the baseline. That's just to get started. But going back to the mastery point, when you put that mastery point in, you get a 10% precision and weapon DPS buff, which can be seen inside of your stats tab. One of the major problems is that points doesn't always result in a 10% damage increase. Assuming the staff weapon update didn't break anything else, like what most weapon updates end up doing unintentionally. As of right now, as I counted, there are 30 weapon attacks, either taps, hold, or combos that do not conform to the 10% damage increase on a tick. Some of them are 20%, some are 30, some are 40s, like the martial arts spinning punch and the 4th melee tap of two-handed. And then there are just blatant outliers like rifles rolling barrage, which is like a 212 damage percent increase, two-handed second melee tap with like an 85% damage increase, and dual wields double throw, aka the first hold range that goes into explosive shot. Yeah, that is sitting at a 75% damage increase. And the funny part is, dual wield double throw wasn't even sitting at 75% originally. Like, for the record, every other hold range in the game has a 10% increase. It's literally just dual wield. But anyway, the day before the final weapon update on test server, we didn't know that it was the final update at the time for obvious reasons, but before that, I had dual wield sitting at a 45% damage increase. Obviously, I wanted to go down to 10% to match the other weapon throws. This patch comes out, says that it corrected a bunch of damage increase in the weapon mastery point without giving details. So I'm thinking, okay, hopefully this fixes all of the fucking problems I saw from all of the different weapons, including this one. I tested 5 weapons that were supposed to be changed, and not a damn thing was different. So I'm thinking that some of this update didn't even go through or whatever. I'm thinking something has to be wrong here. So I skipped forward to live server, and now we're sitting at a 75% increase on double throw instead of 45%, which accounts for the buff that explosive shot got compared to test server. So to put that in perspective, without the mastery point, without my weapon buff, etc., it's doing around 2500-ish damage with my current precision per sparring target or whatever. So that's 23 to 2500-ish per target. I put the mastery point in, which is supposed to be like every other weapon throw, supposed to be a 10% buff, and that's would have put it at around 25 to 27-ish. And instead of 25 to 27-ish, it's actually going up to 3900 to 4300. Looking at the low end, that's around 1400 damage per target more than what should technically be intended. If you do that on 3 targets, that makes 5200 extra damage. You do 4 of those whole combos for like 4 explosive shot weapon masteries in 10 seconds, that's over 20,000 extra damage done, and that's unbuffed. For 10-second parts, that's literally 2k extra DPS. And then if you go back and you look at explosive shot and compare it to arrow storm, hand blaster, explosive shot, and voila, you see around a 2k DPS increase. Like, I wonder where that came from. And then in addition to that, you have other instances of things that seem blatantly broken, at least to me. You have Shuriken Storm from martial arts that doesn't give a consistent amount of ticks. You have Flurry from one-handed that still does not give a consistent amount of ticks. Although Pulse Beam seems to have been corrected. Pulse Beam used to be on that list, but I couldn't get Pulse Beam to give me different ticks, so it seems like that one got fixed. But the other two, technically I was still able to get to do it on test server as well as on live server in terms of not giving a consistent amount of ticks. Baseline Arrow Storm and Rifle's whole range are doing the same DPS as melee combos, which is a problem just for PvP and ranking up, but still, those I wanted to actually get to later, but didn't have time to, considering that the main things, the more important things, were technically still broken. You have combos like Sweep Shot or Jump Shot into Magnum Round, and the shield throw patterns that are just straight gone if you put in the weapon mastery point. And this is one of those things where it only makes sense for the purpose of saving the inputs for the weapon mastery. So say Jump Shot into Magnum Round is the same input as Meteor Blast weapon mastery. It's the tap range, hold melee, hold range. And both of those combos can't exist at the same time for obvious reasons. However, to me, your combo choice should not be restricted without you opting into it. If you choose to not get the weapon mastery point, you're technically losing 10% weapon damage. You shouldn't have to choose between 10% weapon damage and being able to do a combo that you were previously already using. Instead of that input overriding happening at the mastery point, I would have put that on the actual weapon mastery point, so that way only if you spec into that weapon mastery would you lose the ability to do the old Jump Shot in the Magnum Round combo. Shield throws actually perform the exact same. There are 3 throws with the shield, the first damage tick being low, the second 2 ticks being high. And without the weapon mastery point, for whatever reason, the shield throws don't reset. After the 3rd throw, it goes to the 2nd throw and then the 3rd throw again. You never go back and actually do the first weapon throw. This actually allows you to have a higher DPS than whenever it resets fully, because you're just staying at the 2 higher ticks. That full reset happens whenever you put in the mastery point. You go back to the first throw after the 3rd, and if you don't have the Magnum Round mastery spec for. And as such, your DPS gets decreased out of nowhere seemingly, even though your precision went up if you're not paying attention to the damage ticks. And going back to dual pistols, Sweep Shot doesn't even have a weapon mastery for the same input. You can't do Sweep Shot into a ranged weapon mastery. It goes into a melee one from using the whole melee input. you should be able to do sweep shot and hold melee to go into the ultra flare weapon mastery, or hold range in the magnum round and then accordingly do the solar flame mastery afterward. Because guess what, you can actually do it with kick. Kick can still go into magnum round even after the mastery point, and you can do kick into magnum round into the solar flame mastery. But for some reason, sweep shot doing the same thing is off limits. Don't understand. In my opinion, if these type of complications were going to be inside the mastery point, I'd rather just scrap that code entirely and just move the 10% weapon DPS and prick buff into the weapon expert focus and just buff it to 20%. Have the weapon mastery point just say allows access to weapon mastery combos, may remove previous possible combos, or something along those lines. While dual pistols is over here out of whack from lost combos, brawling and dual pistols, I originally referred to them as having like shadow hidden phantom damage. I called it at the time because even though the damage ticks on the screen were 10% higher, I was seeing a 20+% DPS increase, and I noticed extra damage ticks inside of the combat log. Going off of memory here, but if I remember correctly, brawling into Haymaker without the mastery point, just doing the weapon combo by itself, was 222 hits in a 60-second parse. That went up to 249 with the mastery point in. Dual wheel stunning swipe, the 3-tap hold, went from 276 up to 300 in a 60-second parse. And thanks to Basic for essentially figuring it out, but the animation times are actually cut for both of those combos. Your hit counter on screen, the actual live one that goes up every time you hit something, is higher with the mastery point in than it is without. And for stunning swipe, it's actually easier to see, as if you actually watch your character's right arm, it resets and comes up at the end of the dovetail / the animation of the regular stunning swipe before you go into the next tap, and that last little ending part is no longer, like, it no longer does that once the weapon mastery point is put in. Part of the animation is actually cut off, which means that those combos, as well as any weapon mastery combos following, following from them, are slightly higher. They have slightly more rotations than they're supposed to have. And the reason this becomes important is I'm about to switch over and actually show this on PC in a live recording, just so you guys can see everything that I'm seeing.
All right, so this is going to be a live recording as I go through this. Forgive me for any misspeakings that I have. I'm going to try not to make mistakes and to be as clear as I can. I'm not going to try to be precise, just because some things I am really going to want to exaggerate and hammer in here. But anyway, to go through and get started, this is the public test update notes sections of the forums. And as you can see, October 23rd, Metal Part 1 and Game Update 97, August 24th, August 28th, 30th, September 4th, 6th, 10th, and then October 15th is way after that. That's something else completely disregarded. And so each of these I have pulled up here. So this section is going to be in regards to Doomspan and the overarching problems that I have become aware of and that have greatly disturbed me personally, in a sense. But let me just go ahead and get into this. Going through and scrolling down, you end up seeing all of these weapon attacks. And so, how can I put this? Looking at the first couple, I thought that these mastery points were, how can I put this? That whenever it said mastery, I assumed these were weapon masteries originally, or whatever. But then I went through and I noticed a few things. So, say for example, this says Kip Up Launcher. This says Kip Up Launcher Mastery. The thing is, Kip Up Launcher Mastery doesn't, as a weapon mastery, does not exist, which means that this has to be the, what's the name of it? This has to be the weapons expert point that for some reason they're fucking tampering with. And so this creates a, this creates an issue, a significant issue, in terms of some of these other things or whatever, because not going through and saying whether or not you're talking about the basic combo mastery or the weapon mastery is important, because notice out of this list, Doomspin is not here under any of these right now. Doomspin is not under here. Doomspin is not under here. Doom spin is not under here. Go through. What is it? Let me just go through, scroll slower just to make sure. Doom spin is not here under the moderately increase, but it is here underneath the significant increases. Now, with this being said, because of the discrepancy that I just mentioned, this can be one of two things. This could be the brawling into the doom spin mastery, or it could be the mastery point version of regular doom spin. Now, what ended up happening later on, was it the 28th? No, that's full auto. Some mastery abilities got changed. Still not correct though. Go here. Bow's flurry shot. Here we go. This one right here. Brawling. Doom spin mastery no longer does 4 times the damage that it was supposed to. Slightly increased home runs damage. Now, this, or whatever, being the only time that doom spin is mentioned, or whatever. This is the September 6th notes. Nothing. We go to the, what's the name of it? We go to the very, very last one before live server, September 10th. We go inside of here. Just bow slam, or whatever, mastery being increased, and the duration of the self-weapon buff. Those were, what's the name? Those were changes, but this was the last big update, and this is on the 4th. The 4th of September. That this ends up coming in, and we see brawling doom spin mastery. Now, notice two-handed is not on this list of things that got changed at all. Two-handed is not there. Two-handed is not here. Two-handed is not inside of this update. Two-handed is not here. Two-handed is not even on this list at all, other than possibly as a reference to this. Now, if I want to play devil's advocate, and let's just say I go out on a wing and say doom spin mastery was meant to affect the regular doom spin's mastery point, and not the weapon mastery, but somehow the weapon mastery version of it ended up being affected. Don't necessarily know how that fucking works, but let's just assume that was the case or whatever, because if we assume that this is a reference to the actual weapon mastery combo, regular doom spin was not even supposed to be touched. That's something that is not even here. That is not on the list. That is in none of the other test server notes at all, or whatever. That was something that was not even supposed to be touched or whatever, if I assume that this is a reference to the weapon mastery or whatever, in which case that's just straight up out of nowhere severe damage increase that I'll talk about later. Let's just play devil's advocate and let's just assume this isn't the weapon mastery. This is a weapon. This is a reference to the mastery point. And so just to go back and reiterate this, you have the base damage of a weapon, and then you have the mastery version of the damage of the weapon combo. And basically, the mastery point increases your precision by 10% along with your weapon DPS. So it's supposed to be 10% or whatever. Technically, you're not supposed to be going in and changing it like what they're doing. This is technically, I would just like doing this as a whole is technically fucking up the system, but I'll get into that later. But even assuming they were, the base damage of Doom Spin would stay the same, but then the mastery would end up being slightly stronger. So say for example, Solar Flame, Jump Shot, these are combos that have 20, 30, 40, whatever percentage increase extra on, what's the name of it? How can I put this? They have extra increases whenever they put the mastery point in. Instead of increasing by 10% of their DPS, they increase by 20, 30, 40, 80, whatever percentage. Like I gave a few examples earlier. So they end up increasing in that, but the base damage stays exactly the same. Now, this... All right, so I'm gonna go through and pull up one of the old ones. Now, just to go through and show this, this is last modified 8:31, 5:33 p.m. 8:31 is literally before this update happens here, and two-handed is nowhere in these notes, nowhere inside of these notes on September 4th. Because this is the old Excel sheet that I had. Now, whenever you go through and you look at these numbers, you're going to notice a pattern. As a side note, the original format was just like, I believe this was all, I want to say single target parsing if I remember right, just because I was just trying to get damage values. I wasn't comparing them to melee. I was just trying to get all of the things that I considered to be bugs, and then I was going to go through and then obviously do single target clipping, 3-target clipping, blah, 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 blah. But let me get rid of some of this other stuff. Technically, I'll already have this bleeped out, but there's fucking notifications and fucking other documents that I have showing on the side. What was it? So you'll see outliers here or whatever. So you'll see some of the bigger numbers here, like with the weapon expert spec, you'll see like 5,000, 6,000, low 7,000s max. But then you see uppercut over here as an outlier, 14,000 damage. This ended up getting fixed. This was, where is it? Right here. Hand blasters uppercut was definitely a problem. I fixed that this morning. That was on the 30th or whatever, which means that, what's the name of it? That didn't make it into the patch for the 31st or whatever. That was just both flurry shot and flurry shot mastery. The hand blasters didn't get fixed until September 4th, so that was not fixed at the time of me making this Excel sheet or whatever. Hand blasters ended up correcting that because that was the base damage of uppercut that was what's the name of it, that was increased as opposed to the weapon expert spec. This was, I was just like, this was a weapon like this technically should have been either correct or should have been higher, and then this should have been lower significantly accordingly. This was a mistake. And so this ended up getting fixed. This was an outlier and this was getting fixed. You go to bows, you see 6,000s, 7,000s. Oh, look, you look at flurry shot. Flurry shot was on the list to go through and get nerfed. That was one of the ones that I just called out. Flurry was an outlier, got nerfed. You go to brawling, you see a whole bunch of 6,000s, 7,000s, just this one 8,000. And I'm going to talk about whatever. And I already talked about this. This is technically an animation speed up. This isn't even supposed to be this high. Dual pistols, sweep shot, mastery point was an issue. This was technically not supposed to be this high. This is an outlier clearly from all of the other numbers. Got patched. Jump shot and the sweep shot obviously having the same issue as just regular sweep shot. Dual wield, no outliers. You look at the numbers, 6,000, 7,000. Martial arts, 6,000. You have technically have the 7,900 or whatever that got, I don't even know how the fuck this number even fucking got here. This technically I don't think was supposed to be this high. I think this ended up getting changed. I think one-handed 6,000s, 7,000s. Go to rifle, 6,000s, 7,000s. Shield, you have 5,000s, and I said it doesn't even reach the fucking 6Ks. It's just in the fucking 5,000s. Everything else was just like a damage decrease at that point. That was the highest point. Shield was actually low. Go to staff, and then you have these. You have martial arts. You have, not martial arts, martial flowers, launching roundhouse, leaping overhead strike. You go, or whatever. These are noticeable outliers. These are like 10, 12, 14,000, while everything else inside of that weapon is in like the 4 to 6K type range. You go through, you look at these, martial flowers no longer does 2 times the damage that it was supposed to be. Leaping overhead strike no longer does 2 times the damage that it's supposed to be. Doomspin mastery was 4 times the damage that it was supposed to be. Like, you go back to, what's the name of it, to flurry, which was where flurry was, I think it was one of the notes. Flurry was doing, I believe Flurry was 4 times the damage it was supposed to be, if I remember right. Full auto is 10 times as much. I believe Flurry was 4 times as much, if I remember right. I feel like Autumn made a post about hand blasters. Let me see if I can actually find it really quick. I want to see is it inside of another post. Just gonna go back. Sweep shot, copy paste issue, you reduce the damage, hand blast uppercut. Yeah, here we go. Both flurry normal was doing 4 times the damage it was supposed to be. So that was another, what's the name of it? That was another outlier inside of the sheet. Where is it? Bow should have been at the top. Yeah, flurry. Here, outlier 18K, 4 times the damage that it's supposed to be. And so You get staff, all of these combos or whatever, clear outliers compared to everything else inside of the weapon. These are all things that end up getting nerfed. You go to two-handed, however, Doomspin is with everything else inside of the thing. Doomspin is perfectly fine. Has the 10% damage increase that it's supposed to have. And this number, these 5,000s, 8,000s, these fall into the same numbers that all of the other combos end up having. They all end up being inside of that same 4 to 6k range. Occasionally you'll have some that end up getting 7s, but technically those are the single target moves or some of the harder hitting moves that have favoritism for other methods. But what's the name of it? How can I put this or whatever? Everything falls within the same area or whatever. Everything is fine, but everything that is an outlier, everything that is broken 10k on this list for a basic combo has all been unintended and has been doing double the damage that it was supposed to do. So say this right here, launching Roundhouse, this was 10,000. This was really supposed to be around 5,000 and some change. It was not supposed to be this high. I was just like, it was not supposed to be an outlier like this. And so, let me go back and put this screen back on where it was supposed to be. There we go. All right, so going back to before, assuming this is supposed to be the mastery point, Doomspin or whatever, assuming this, technically this was at 10%, which means that this was never maybe working as intended in terms of maybe it was like 5% before and then they slightly increased it to 10% or something. I don't fucking know. Like, that would mean that technically this wasn't ideal, but this number, the weapon expert point, this was supposed to be higher in regards to this number and not this number becoming ridiculously higher. Because you see everything has a general area. Everything is roughly speaking, roughly balanced here. But then on live server, I went through and created a new one. This is the one that I've technically been working on and that I was going through and doing for the guide. This is one of the Excel sheets that I have for the guide. Let me just leave. Okay, that's fine. Zoom in. You go to 100%. I'm just going to keep it at 100. I'm not going to do 200. All right, so we go here and slightly different format in terms of how it was, because I went through and I actually did more in detail parsing in terms of 3-target versus single target, just because I started actually using rotations for some of these instead of just looking for bugs. And so as a side note, this SNBI means that there's something that I believe should not be intended or whatever, since I'm going to get into this later, but I'm really pissed off at what's intended and not intended. But you have the 5,000s. What's the name of? These are 3 targets. This is a single target. Some of these categories you're gonna have to like fill in the blank, so to speak. So say for example, smoke bomb. This is a full AOE combo. So if you wanted the single target DPS of this, you would basically just have it. You could just imply what this would end up getting because it's fully AOE. So instead of going through and parsing it, I knew I could just do simple math and fill this in if I needed to, which is the reason why. Like later on down here, you'll see things like this. Whenever I was going through and making a tier list, it would be like arrow fling parts this on single target. It's full AOE or whatever. In an AOE situation, it should be hitting for that amount of damage. So because we're talking about Doomspin, we're going to be looking at these 2 columns right here. This is without and with the weapon expert point. And so you're going to see spinning punch here, 6,000, 7,000, 7,000, smoke bomb, 7,000, 7,600. You're going to go to one-handed. You're going to see 5,000s. You're going to see 6,000s, barely pushing 7K. You're going to go into bow. You're going to have arrow fling in the 6,000s. Arrow storms in the 7,000s, and I don't like this at all, but I'm going to go through and talk about that later. You have clobber from two-handed, which is in the 6,000s, 7,000s. Same thing with the taps, which technically shouldn't be existing, but talk about that later as well. You go big scoop. You go home run. Or whatever, that would end up being an implied roughly around that area. Mega smash, jump canceled, 7,000-ish areas. Mega spin would have ended up being that. But then you have doom spin here. That's at 11,500 and at 12,300. But okay, that's new. Was not expecting that. Okay, let's go to the other weapon combos. See if anything else is like that. Full auto, sweep shot, 5,000, 6,000, same as before. That's a combo that got lost. Let's see, brawling, double fist, launching haymaker, 6,000, punt on the high end at 8,000. Haymaker is 8,500, but it said beforehand the weapon expert point technically bucks this should have been 9,000 cap at tops, and even then I technically still didn't like haymaker. This was technically still on like the extreme end for AoE DPS. This technically shouldn't have even existed. But rifle doesn't have AoE. Other than weapon mastery, the basic combo doesn't have any AoE. Dual wield, you get an AoE, 6,000, 7,000s, or whatever. Hand blasters, 5,000s, 6,000s. You go into shields. I changed from metal resonators to dark phylacteries because I was running SGE a lot, so it slightly changed my prick, and so I went through and found the ratio of my damage before and after, and so roughly increased my DPS. I mean, it roughly decreased my DPS by 7.54%. So whenever I went through and did these last two weapon combos of testing, I had all of the numbers, but then I had to go back and recalculate in that small buff just so I could go back and accurately compare these to all of the other combos that I had. Those updated numbers after the 7.54% are inside of parentheses. So we're going to be looking at the numbers in parentheses here. So you have whatever for the melee AoE combos, you're going to be looking at 5,000, 6,000, 6,500, 5,000s, 6,000s for staff or whatever. They're all inside of the same area. Technically, this is bugged or whatever. I don't know what the fuck they did with fucking downward smash. Me and Crappy told them to fucking buff downward smash. Downward smash, the actual combo itself, the hold after 3 taps, does the same amount of damage as a tap. There should never be any hold combo in the game that does the same amount of damage as a tap. It's so weak to do downward smash that it's actually more DPS for me to just do 4 weapon taps instead of doing downward smash. It doesn't actually become a higher DPS until I do the second version of it that's vulnerable to counter. And even then, the taps are still ridiculously close to matching downward smash as a combo just because it takes so long in order to do it. And then whenever you actually go in terms of actually doing combos, whenever you're using super speed or you're clipping in moves, it would be better to go through and do it with 4 weapon taps because 4 weapon taps is shorter than what downward smash is. You're going to end up getting more might-based damage inside of your rotation / speeding up your rotation more with 4 weapon taps than what you will with downward smash or whatever. You should never have a rotation where taps are better than doing the combos or whatever, any combos for that matter. And then this is so weak that Focus Barrage is actually out DPSing it. I actually ended up having to use Focus Barrage, which is a ranged weapon combo, melee with super speed to try to get staff even remotely close to some of the other weapons because downward smash was so trash. But even then, or whatever, downward smash, assuming that downward smash was ever to be corrected, this is only going to go up to maybe 6,000, 7,000 tops or whatever. It's not like this is going to shoot from 5,000 to 10,000. Boosting up the damage of the first downward smash tick is not going to all of a sudden make this double in its fucking DPS. This is going to end up falling, roughly speaking, where some of the other combos are from the other weapons, where it should be. And so it's at this point, you have 5,000, 6,000, low 7,000s for the vast majority of things besides brawling, which I already said was technically having a faster animation for some goddamn reason. But meanwhile, two-handed is still sitting at 11,500 baseline and then 2,300 afterward. And the funny thing is, like, if that patch note or whatever, if we go back to this, if this was just the mastery version of it and not the regular Doom spin, this number should have still been lower than all the rest of them, like what it was previously. Previously, it was below Mega Smash and everything else inside of the fucking two-handed combo or whatever. This is definitely not baseline. This is definitely not with the other combos inside of two-handed. This is significantly higher than everything else. And then the weapon mastery point of it, the weapon expert point of it still increases it, roughly speaking, by about, by around the damage that it's supposed to. There are some other factors with two-handed that complicate the situation, such as the actual weapon taps obviously being fucked up, but the actual doomspin ticks themselves, if I remember correctly, do increase by 10%. They're not actually off as a whole or whatever, which means that the mastery aspect of doomspin was not changed from what it was beforehand, but the baseline got doubled or whatever compared to basically everything else. Because if you're talking about it being less than jump cancel and full, this was literally supposed to be what? Yeah, it's like 200-300 less ish. So you go up about a K. Yeah, this was supposed to be probably around 5,300. And instead it's at 11,500. It basically got fucking doubled in how much DPS it was doing compared to beforehand. And that's not what the notes say is supposed to be happening. Either this note is a reference to the weapon mastery, which is what actually ended up getting fucking buffed a fucking ridiculous amount or whatever. And what's the name of it? How can I put this? Either this is a reference to the weapon mastery combo that ended up getting buffed a lot, that had to go back and get re-nerfed. And this is completely something that should have been unintended / is phantom from the notes, or it's supposed to be in regards to the combo. The weapon mastery that got affected for some reason ended up being fixed, but then the baseline for Doomspin was increased, doubled, instead of actually the weapon expert point inside of it. No matter which interpretation I take, this is not supposed to be happening. Worst case scenario, this starts off at 5,300, and then it just has some big, say 40%, 30% buff, and it may go up into the, what's the name of it? It may end up going into the 8,000s or something along those lines or whatever. It may go into the 6, 7s, maybe the 8s, but it wouldn't reach 12.3. No matter which interpretation I end up taking from these notes, this does not make sense from either one of those. And for me to go through and point out that two-handed's baseline is twice as strong as the others inside of the thread, and for Meps to point it out as a bug, means that this is intended. This is intended. Everything else that was an outlier compared to weapons was nerfed. Or whatever. It was all 2 times, 3 times, 4 times as much damage as what it's supposed to be. Two-handed becomes an outlier just like everything else. And all of a sudden, this is intended. And it's not covered inside of the notes. The intentions of the notes do not cover this. This is the defining moment where it's starting to, or whatever, where it somewhat starts to click inside of my head that they're breaking the game intentionally. And then I start seeing things in a new light. So just to join me in a little conspiracy theory right here. Well, that may not even be a conspiracy theory, because technically we already know this happens inside of us, inside of some other game companies. They'll go through and they'll break shit on purpose and then come back later. So situations like this, you'll see made adjustments to Rifle / Flurry so it does increasing damage as the combo progresses. This was in regards to this is in regards to Pinnerin, because what's the name of it? He was noticing, here we go. He was noticing that the Rifle Flurry, whenever you end up doing the combos, that what's the name of it? The longer inputs for the Flurry mastery weren't increasing. Now the question is, why would you go through and have the weapon mastery increasing as the combo progresses, but then, as I said before, like anything else that I'm saying inside of this video, in the past, right now, in the future, feel free to go on live server and test this shit yourselves or whatever, because all of this is whatever works on live as of right now. If you go through and you spam 1-tap hold with rifle, it does more DPS than 2-tap, 3-tap, and 4-tap hold. All of them end up getting beat. Your DPS decreases as you go along. Now, why would you make overhead smash into flurry do less damage than 2-tap hold into flurry, 3-tap hold into flurry, 4-tap hold into flurry? Why would you end up making, what's the name of it? Why would you end up making the combos do that or whatever? Why would that be intended or whatever? Like, how can I put this? Why would it be intended for the weapon mastery to increase as the combo goes on, but not the basic combo? That makes no sense. Like, I originally took this, whenever I read this, I took this as an intention that increasing damage as a combo progresses is supposed to be an intended concept, when really they were just doing it to just this combo and not everything else. The original, whatever, the actual baseline combos still don't do that. Same thing holds true for dual wield. Same thing holds true for shield. And it's weird because they're making this change, but then you have shit like, where is it? Let me actually go back. I think I actually lost the tab that originally had what I wanted, but it should be under the developer discussions still. Give me 1 second. Weapon combat update. Here we go. This. In a lot of cases, damage was shifted to earlier in the combo. This doesn't make sense. This directly contradicts the intention of this. Because now you're having weapon masteries increase as the combo progresses, and regular weapon combos don't follow that. And to make it weirder is that depending on how depending on how this ends up increasing, it's actually funny. Hold up. It also depends on how can I put this? On how Penrin did this. Actually, no, he's looking at, here we go. So say, for example, Flurry Mastery from one tap hold does noticeably more damage or whatever. This is actually funny here because I'm literally noticing this live as I'm recording this. He says he's looking at 4.5k per hit on the shorter combo. So what's the name of it? He's doing one tap hold flurry, and that flurry mastery ticks are hitting for 4.5k versus 3.5k from the longer inputs or whatever. So the flurry mastery itself is decreasing in damage as it goes on. And then they come back and make it to where it does increasing damage as the combo progresses. The funny thing is that the staff nerf that just happened on live, the flip burst mastery, which Fatal said had always increased the damage beforehand, doesn't actually increase in damage anymore. Or whatever. I was like, the flip burst actually does the same amount of damage as what the regular one does, if not maybe ever so slightly less. I think I was looking at maybe a 100 damage difference. So I'm thinking RNG, but roughly the same, not a noticeable increase at all. The total DPS is still higher just because of how Flower works, but the actual damage ticks on the weapon mastery aren't there. And so you have Rifle into Flurry increasing in damage as the combo progresses, but Staff isn't doing that anymore or whatever. And that's one reason why you normally don't push shit onto fucking test server. Why you normally don't push updates onto live server instead of putting them onto test and then live server, so you can actually make sure shit is doing what it's supposed to. Because this is a direct contradiction. Technically, this contradicts what you're supposed to be doing, how regular weapon combos are supposed to be functioning. But then even weapon mastery versus other weapon masteries, this does not hold as a concept that ends up, I guess you could say, being consistent. And so you have that instance happening. I go back and I start looking at some of the, what's the name of it? Some of the others. Let me actually zoom out of this just a little bit, just so you guys can, or whatever, for those that are on full screen or whatever, you'll be able to go through and see what I see. So you go through and you start looking at some of these things or whatever in terms of general concepts, in terms of how the game is supposed to work. And you see shit like this, for example. This is knee launch, one tap hold, 40% damage tick increase. Why do the other one tap holds have a 40% damage tick increase? What is air launch? Air launch is 20. So air launch is 20%. Yeah, air launch is 20%. Still significantly higher than what this is, even with the 40%. And That technically makes no sense at all. Like, I don't understand why this is 40% instead of just increasing the baseline to be the same as one tap hold. Let's see, Kip Up Launcher. Kip Up Launcher is around 3,700, which means that martial arts is technically still behind in terms of one tap hold. What's another one tap hold that you could do? You have a lifting strike. Lifting strikes in the 3,000s as well. Like, that doesn't. Like, it's not looking well for fucking martial arts, even with a 40% damage take for some reason. His one tap hold is still significantly less than the others, which is weird. You also have cases where, say for example, just foundationally, this is going to apply to every single weapon. You have this relationship here or whatever. This is what you're going to end up seeing ranking up. Whenever you're ranking up as a like from a new player perspective, this is what you are going to see ranking up. But then as soon as you get the skill points, this is what you're going to see afterward. And I do not like this concept at all, or whatever, to go through and to have the mastery point dictating which combos, I guess you could say, have favoritism inside of certain things. So say, for example, whenever you would be ranking up, you would see cartwheel kick and then you would see elbow drop. Your DPS would be higher doing elbow drop. And so you're going to start doing elbow drop whenever you get into higher content, when actually your DPS is going to be better, especially clipping wise, if you're using cartwheel kick instead. But because of the mastery point difference between cartwheel kick, this having a 20% DPS increase, while elbow drop only has 10%, causes these to technically be different. You get into smoke bomb. Smoke bomb has more DPS than what spinning punch does. You're going to see that ranking up. But as soon as you get that mastery point, all of a sudden spinning punch is doing more damage than smoke bomb. Though whatever, because smoke bomb has a 40% damage increase, while spinning punch has a 40% damage increase, while smoke bomb only has a 10%. Favoritism toward spinning punch over smoke bomb, favoritism toward cartwheel kick over fucking elbow drop. Whatever. You have one-handed, which technically doesn't, how can I put this? It technically reverses it. So how can I put this? Flurry is stronger than flip slash without the point, and you're going to see that ranking up. But as soon as you get the weapon mastery point, flip slash becomes stronger than flurry. But it's actually funny because even though flip slash produces more damage than what flurry does by itself, whenever you actually get into clipping rotations and speeding up rotations, flurry actually outperforms flip slash. So technically, you'll end up swapping what you do as you put the weapon mastery point in, and then you'll switch it again once you get into actual rotations. But you wouldn't actually know that unless you went through and actually parsed each of them. If you went off of what you started as here, you would be fine. But if you went off of what you discovered here, you wouldn't be. And so this is an unconventional, like an inconvenient switching that's technically being done here. That's technically annoying. That's not something that should be ideal. And then you have shit like two-handed here with 55, 60, 7600. I don't even understand how I can do 4 melee taps from two-handed and it does more damage than home run. It does more damage than mega smash jump canceled. And it's literally right there next to clobber, which is blockable. But that's because the second tap of two-handed has a 85% damage tap or whatever damage tick increase, and the fourth tap has a 40% damage tick increase. Like, this doesn't make any sense. I'm going to get into it again later. Doomspin, I already said, doesn't make any sense. You go into dual pistols, and you have an error in coding that I'm assuming has existed since fucking weapon mastery, but I'm assuming nobody said anything back then in order to try to get this shit fixed or whatever. And so either nobody said anything in order to get it fixed, or the developers didn't want to or couldn't fix it. But couldn't fix it is, I'll probably say, a fucking tough word. So I already went through and basically said it, but essentially these combos don't exist. What's the name of it? Once you put in the mastery point, and that's something that's going to throw off new players or whatever. If they learn to do these combos, which are inside of the dual pistols description, as soon as they put in that weapon expert point, they're not going to be able to do those combos anymore. That's also going to end up being confusing. You go to, what's the name of it? You go to brawling, and Haymaker, 23% DPS increase, which means that the gap between haymaker and punt is being increased. So beforehand, if you were using punt instead of haymaker, for whatever reason, that damage trade-off that you made, that gap just got increased. So instead of sitting here looking at, say, this, what is this, barely 800, what's the name of it, 700, 800 DPS gap, now it's like 1400 just because of this 23% on haymaker instead of the 10% on punt or whatever. Like, well, not because of that 20. Well, how can I put this? Because of this 23% increase, that is because of the animation time difference or whatever. That's what's the name of it. That's going to end up causing a favoritism toward this one particular combo from brawling. You go to rifle because overhead smash has a 20 to 25% damage tick increase. Going through and doing other weapon types that do not have 20% means that going further into the combo is going to slowly decrease your DPS as you're going about doing it. That is not intended. Rolling Barrage actually came out of nowhere. This was originally not even here because, how can I put this? Inside of the original weapons, I went through and did, what is it? It was flip burst / rolling barrage. This was originally plus 20%, which I thought was supposed to be double the intended. If you go through and do that exact same combo now, it's actually 83%. So this actually got made worse going to live server than what it was on test server, even though there were supposed to be corrections. And this ended up coming out of fucking nowhere or whatever. And this obviously shouldn't have been intended, especially since Rolling Barrage was never supposed to be a combo that, if I remember correctly, is not even on the original list. I don't even think Rolling Barrage Mastery was even supposed to be on this list of combos that was even supposed to be getting affected. Yeah, that wasn't even on the list of combos that was supposed to be getting changed, and that got changed during one of the updates. Either, what's the name of it? It would have either had to have been changed in here with mastery versions of abilities now do more damage compared to their normal parts or whatever. Either this ended up breaking it, because rifle wasn't one of the weapons that I went through and tested. I tested like 5 weapons, but rifle wasn't one of them. Rifle and dual wield weren't them or whatever. Rifle, I didn't go back through and test, but either this update would have had to have broken it, which was the last update on test server, or going to live server, it would have had to have been broken. One of these two technically, what's the name of it? One of these two technically broke it. But I figured that since 4 of them had happened, and what's the name of it? Since 4 of them had been exactly the same in terms of some of the percentages that I had checked, I figured that the other 6 weapons probably wouldn't have changed either, and that this update didn't actually go through the way that it was supposed to. But that's another reason why normally you don't rush things to fucking live server, and you normally try to do a little bit more detail in terms of how you end up doing the fucking patch notes. But that's just minor criticism. But rifle, that gives favoritism toward this combo now, when normally this technically didn't exist beforehand, because now this combo does almost the same amount of DPS as what Smash does, and it's rivaling some of the longer ones. This originally wasn't a thing. You have, what is it? You have the dual wield, the double throw that I already mentioned beforehand because of the damage tick increase on that. That ends up affecting that ends up affecting the explosive shot mastery, and that goes for any of these combos. Any of these combos that have this favoritism, this extra 25-30%, these are all things that will end up affecting masteries or whatever as well, because they're obviously part of the combo. So say, for example, I couldn't have favoritism to overhead smash, but the flurry weapon mastery not be affected. The DPS that the flurry mastery is going to do is obviously going to be affected toward favoritism of these combos. And so you have weapon masteries that don't have favoritism combos, and then weapons like, actually, instead of or whatever, it'll be easier for me to explain this later. Actually, let me just postpone that point. Let me just go back to what I was doing beforehand. Dual wield, same thing. Going through, you have a 20% damage tick increase on the one tap hold, which means on the end combo of it, which means that going through and doing extra taps is going to end up not increasing damage, along with the fact of, since dual flurry, since that tick doesn't actually have it or whatever, the 6 tick doesn't have favoritism. It doesn't have that extra 20%, so none of its damage even remotely comes close to what Stunning Swipe is. That's just going to be a huge damage discrepancy because of that favoritism. You go through to Hand Blasters, you have favoritism on Uppercut, you have favoritism on Fist Slam, you have favoritism on Meteor Blast. Same thing goes with fucking Solar Flame. Favoritism across the board on fucking Hand Blasters. I'm going to get back to that later too. You shield, same thing. You have favoritism on, what is it on? I can't even think of it. On Spinning Slash, Leaping Stab, Spinning Downward Cross. These are technically going to be the highest producing numbers that you're going to get on fucking shield. This is technically like alt. Whenever I say alt holding, I mean like doing a tap and then a hold. So technically it's going to include like a whole bunch of this. Technically is going to include values from some of these as well, but slightly offset. But man, technically these are going to produce your highest because they have favoritism. And same thing goes for staff. You go to Martial Flowers, it's going to have favoritism. Leaping, what's the name of it? Leaping Overhead Strike, obviously being there. Obviously being consequences of Martial Flowers being, what's the name of it? Having that favoritism there. And that irritates me because whenever you start making tier lists, you start seeing some of the consequences of this. So, okay, now it's time to wrap everything in here. And forgive me because I'm going to bleep out the majority of the screen because there's other things that, like, how can I put this? Other tier lists that I do not want to show because I'm not making the fucking weapon guide anymore. And I'm just going to let people figure it out on their own. But technically, I can go through and I can show this first half, this first little corner. All right, so... Whoa. Okay, yeah, so just part of the screen. What's the name of it? Well, actually, no, not part of the screen. Technically, I can go ahead and just show all of this just because technically, even this second half, this is just, what's the name of it? This is just a basic loadout. This would have just been like P-Dart weapon buff by itself or whatever. This isn't super speed clipping or anything like that involved. This is just baseline. This would be like PvP. But you sit here and you look at these, what's the name? You sit here and you look at these increases, and these don't make any sense because I said beforehand, Haymaker has the animation increase or whatever, has the animation time decrease, which means that Haymaker and Home Run Mastery should not even be here. These should technically be nerfed or whatever. How much they will be nerfed by, I do not know, but they should obviously, they would obviously be doing lower damage if you're going to end up losing like a rotation off of your damage. That's a sizable chunk. You look at Martial Arts Sweep Shot Mastery, well, why is it doing that much amount of damage? You go back to Martial Arts Sweep Shot Mastery, what weapon is that? That's Martial Arts. What comes before the Sweep Shot? You have Spinning Punch. And what is the modifier for Spinning Punch? Boom, 40%. Favoritism. Hand Blasters Arrow Fling. Next on the line, 8901. What is Arrow Fling? Arrow Fling is Solar Flame, if I remember. No, wait, Meteor Blast. Yeah, Meteor Blast from Hand Blasters. What is Meteor Blast? Let's see. Hand Blasters. Meteor Blast. Yeah, 20% damage increase. Favoritism. Ground Pound. Hand Blasters. What is that? That is Fist Slam. What's the name of it? Fist Slam into the Ground Pound. So where is Hand Blasters at? Hand Blasters is here. Fist Slam is 20% damage tick increase from the weapon mastery point. Go back to the tier list. Dual Wield, Launching Uppercut. Let's see. Dual Wield Launching Uppercut is that's 3-tap hold. Yeah, 3-tap hold into 3-tap hold, 3-tap hold, which, if I remember right, that has the animation time decrease after the point, so technically that is going to have something wrong with it. You have Rifle Flurry, which has the overhead smash, which, if I remember pointing out correctly, that also has a 20 to 25% extra damage tick increase from the actual overhead smash tick. That is also favoritism. One-handed dual flurry, that is actually one-handed hold, so actually that is fine, and that is where we start to get to where the regular combos are technically supposed to be at. Because technically this is the full AoE combo. This is single target into AoE weapon mastery. So technically these two aren't even supposed to be close to each other. But because of the favoritism toward the overhead smash combo, this ends up throwing off the balance of what's the name of it, these two combos. And so just assuming these two go, just assuming these two go down, just looking at the next combo with favoritism, baseline compared to 200 Doomspin, 12,300 divided by 8901. That is 38.2% DPS increase. A 38% DPS increase over another weapon mastery. And technically inside of content, especially inside of solo/duos, you're going to find ads doing combos more than they're blocking, which means that assuming CC affects both of them the same in terms of interrupting the combo, Arrow Fling is actually going to get interrupted more than Doomspin just because this actually has, what's the name of it? Just because this actually, I guess you could say, is countered by the scripted attack of NPCs more that they do more often, however you want to word that. This is going to end up being more vulnerable to interrupt than what Doomspin is. But yeah, Doomspin has a 38% DPS increase over it. And if you go through to the first combo that doesn't have favoritism, because let me just go back and check. I believe one-handed spin chop does not have favoritism. You check. Nope, that's air launch. Yeah, spin chop does not have favoritism inside of it. That is the first combo in the tier list that does not have favoritism, and that is 8648. That is a 42.2% DPS increase. A full AoE weapon mastery combo that is losing by 42.2% compared to two-handed Doomspin. And then everything else is just obviously going to end up increasing. Or whatever. That's going to go into certain combos being damn near probably close to 50%, 50, 60%. That percentage is just going to keep increasing. And then in addition to fucking Doomspin having that type of increase compared to everything else on a foundational line, you have shit like this. Two-handed 4 melee taps. This is 7,600. Why is me doing 4 taps with two-handed doing the same amount of DPS as both Smoke Bomb? Now, for anybody that doesn't know that wants to go through and to test this, in order to reset your weapon attack, all you do is just hit a power or a trinket or something that's on cooldown. So you can either take a soda and then just hit the soda, like act like you're clipping the soda, just hit the soda and it'll reset it back to the first weapon tap, or hit a robot sidekick or a weapon buff, whatever you're doing. In this case, I was going through and using the sodas just because it would let me do a 60-second parse because that's the cooldown of the soda. It's convenient. Or you can go through and use the trinket, just wait for the trinket to obviously wear off before you actually start parsing, but that'll give you like a 2-minute window as well, 2-3-minute window, or supply drop, whatever you decide to use. But hit something that's on cooldown and it'll let you reset it. So you do 4 melee taps and then reset, and then 4 melee taps, reset, and you just keep doing that. That will parse you close to the same as both Smoke Bomb without using, say, Super Speed Clipping, just baseline. This is obviously not vulnerable to interrupt and involves no fucking combos at all, and it's close to a weapon mastery. Beats out, I mean, not beats out, but I was like, because technically I'm just going to call this RNG or whatever. 20, I was like 23 is easily RNG, but it's like, it's right there tying with fucking Smoke Bomb, which technically is vulnerable to fucking interrupt. And if you get interrupted before Smoke Bomb actually goes off, this is going to end up decreasing your damage. Like if you had to start over Smoke Bomb for any reason, say you're on 3 taps or the 4 taps and you get CC'd and you have to start over, that's going to hurt you more than having to start over on 4 melee taps or whatever. Not to mention that the 4 melee taps is also going to end up getting sped up more than what the martial arts Smoke Bomb is. Whenever you actually start talking about clipping rotations, there's going to be more might damage. There's going to be more iterations of that sequence of weapons attacks happening in the same time period. Compared to Smoke Bomb, you have one-handed stunning swipe weapon mastery that's losing to fucking two-handed staff cleave. The Bow Arrow Storm shouldn't even be up here. I don't even know how the fuck Bow Arrow Storm is even remotely close to melee weapon mastery combos. It's beating other combos. It's beating Mega Smash. Mega Smash jump canceled or whatever loses to Bow Aerostorm in DPS on AoE. That makes no fucking sense at all. And that's just baseline Aerostorm. I'm assuming Aerostorm is supposed to really be around half of what it is. I'm assuming. That normally shouldn't be that high. It's not a problem for parsing or whatever because it can't clip anything. But at the same time period, from a baseline perspective, not only is this the damage that you will be doing ranking up, but this is also what you'll end up seeing inside of PvP, because Aerostorm isn't like that because of the weapon expert point. It's like that baseline, which means that inside of Legends, you could have somebody going through and smoke bombing inside of the group, and they're going to do barely more damage than what somebody who's standing in the back just spamming Aerostorm. I could be Green Arrow in the back spamming Aerostorm, and I will end up doing damn near the same amount of damage as somebody who's constantly landing smoke bombs who's up in the mix. And more than likely, realistically speaking, they're going to be getting interrupted CC by various moves, so I'm actually probably going to end up actually beating them in DPS. The person in the back should never be doing more damage than the people up front, assuming that they're not being interrupted in the combo by blocks. That's fundamentally a problem. But then you're talking about two-handed beating, dual swipe. You have the shield throws that are technically not supposed to be here. Dual ground pound, one-handed cleave, brawling uppercut. Then we have the next two-handed one after Mega Smash, two-handed home run all the way down at 7,600. It's like, how the fuck is this supposed to be intended? Like, this is just all fucked up. And then I'm sitting here in the 6,000-7,000 categories. Guess where fucking Downward Smash is at? Downward Smash is all the way down here, down next to 4K, all the way here. I can tap hand blasters 3 times and output out more DPS on 3 targets than I can using Downward Smash. One-handed 4 taps, bow 3 taps, staff 4 taps. I can tap with other weapons and do more than I can do with Downward Smash because it is that nerfed. Like, Scissor Kick isn't even AoE, and it technically beats Stab Downward Smash on fucking AoE. That is crazy. That is crazy. And then because it's so weak, even whenever you take the DPS of doing the second combo, you still end up losing to martial arts and rifle taps, which are not even blockable. You end up losing to staff focus spin, rifle hold range. I don't even understand why the fuck rifle hold range is technically even this high. This technically isn't even supposed to be here either. Like, there's a whole bunch of things that don't make any sense. Like, how the fuck is me holding what's the name of it? Holding range with rifle supposed to be neck and neck with one-handed spin chop, brawling hammer fist, shield big scoop, dual pistols, ultra flares. Like, how the fuck do I have melee combos and weapon masteries, and I can just sit here at a range and just hold rifle and do damn near the same amount of DPS? These aren't even supposed to be even close on the fucking spectrum of fucking DPS. This entire tier list is full of mistakes due to either favoritism with that fucking weapon expert point or just blatant breaking of the fucking formula. Like there's no consistency here. And just to throw this over, sorry if I end up bleeping this again, but I'm gonna have to bleep this while I scroll over. Because one portion of this was PvP related. So here we go. All right, so this was just or whatever. Side note, this was not a finished list. This was just certain things or whatever that I was taking note of in terms of, like, for PvP. So for example, whatever 1v1 PvP or whatever, where you're looking at single target damage, you talk about things. So you see, like, dual pistols is up here, dual wield, bow finishing volley, hand blaster uppercut, rifle over smash. You see all of these. This is their DPS, and they're all vulnerable to counter. But then you look at rifle 5-tap melee, which MEP says is intended to not be blockable, has never been blockable in the history of the game. That is a no. That is not counterable. That is not blockable. So I can spam something that's counterable and barely get more DPS, or I can spam this and not be vulnerable to counter. And that, ends up doing more damage than what two-handed clobber does. Now, clobber is technically AoE, so I can hear somebody making that excuse. Why is four-handed melee tap right here next to clobber and it's not vulnerable to block? Why? What is the purpose of even taking a chance on being blockable for this small of an increase in DPS? This is basically nothing inside of PvP. I was like, your health will probably get chunked for 2-3 times this difference if they end up blocking your clobber as opposed to just stopping at the 4 melee taps. Why is the staff roundhouse combo, which is single target? This isn't even AoE. This is the 5 tap from staff. Why is the 5 tap from staff vulnerable to block? It does less damage than what the two-handed melee taps do, and less damage than what rifle is. They're both 5 tap inputs, but this one is vulnerable to block, even though it does less damage than what rifle's 5 tap does. You have one-handed spin slash, another 5 tap hold. I mean, not another 5 tap hold, another 5 tap combo that you have to spec for that is vulnerable to block or whatever. That makes no fucking sense. And then look, even outside of these little nodes, we have more inconsistencies. We have following that, we have shield, dual wield, brawling, then martial arts, all capable of tap spamming and doing this amount of damage without being vulnerable to block. Meanwhile, bow sitting at less DPS than all of these by a decent margin. This is 2,700 compared to 3132. I mean, that's what? Let me go through and let me just 3154 divided by 2798. That is a 12.7% damage increase, and bow is vulnerable to block while the others aren't. And then meanwhile, rifle 4 taps can basically put out the same amount of damage, and I can just reset that. That's not going to be vulnerable to block. Staff isn't going to be vulnerable to block. Bow's 3 tap isn't going to be vulnerable to block. Why the fuck would I even do the 4 tap if I can damn near do the same DPS with just 3 taps and not be vulnerable to block? Let alone, why the fuck is all of this not vulnerable to block, but yet dual pistols is? Literally, dual pistols in the middle of a huge ass list of no's. You have bow's 4th melee tap. You have all of these things that are no's here, but then you just have these 2 outliers. Like bow melee tap is blockable for no goddamn reason, and the same thing goes with fucking dual pistols. Dual pistols is stupid weak. It's literally the 3rd weakest single target that you can do, and for some reason it's blockable. Like, this is supposed to be like, whenever you talk about damage capabilities on single target or AoE, the things that are not vulnerable to counter are supposed to be at the bottom, and then as damage goes up after some threshold, you would end up having vulnerable to block moves. Those are supposed to be your combos that you would end up doing. This is supposed to be a list of no's going into a list of yeses. This is not supposed to be mix matching yes and no's, because as soon as you have things that are in the yes category of damage that are actually no's, you're going to have them being fucking abused. And meanwhile, if you're inside of the no territories and you have yeses, they're going to be at a significant disadvantage playstyle wise. That is not good for fucking balance or whatever. And it's like, it irritates me because looking at all of these things makes me realize just how broken as a whole weapons are inside of this game. That is ranking up versus PvE as well as PvP, whether inside of 4/5s or inside of 1s and 2s. Foundationally, these weapon changes, the weapon changes and the way weapons work right now do not make sense. Like, I was under the impression that there is a formula, there is a pattern, these things are supposed to make sense, there is a harmony, there are trade-offs, and yet the system does not look that way at all whenever you actually lay it out and run the numbers. It just doesn't, it just flat out doesn't make sense. There's so many exceptions to things that should be principles. Because for MEPS to go through and say that shield not being blockable is intended, you're trying to tell me that it's intended for rifle to be inside of the yes category of damage and not be blockable. You're trying to tell me that shield, out of all of these other weapons, in terms of tapping, not being blockable, is there. And the part that makes it even worse is that I went back On DCO's official channel, you can go through and you can see weapon tutorials back from like 2014. That is literally 5 years ago. 5 years ago. You can go watch a weapon tutorial video and half of the screen, I kid you not, half of the screen is the weapon description. You go to Rifle Slam, it says vulnerable to block inside the description. You're trying to tell me that more than likely Rifle Slam has been listed as vulnerable to block for over 5, 6, 7 years, and you haven't fixed it. It's been doing combos, levels of damage, not being vulnerable to block, while its description said that it's supposed to be vulnerable to block. It's saying that it's supposed to be vulnerable to block would make sense because it's in the yes territory in terms of how much damage it's actually doing. It's up here with other things that are fucking single target. I mean, for Christ's sake, it's 3900 and Hand Blaster's Uppercut, which is single target, is here. It has single target combo levels of damage. It would make sense for it to be vulnerable to block. You're literally just missing the icon and the actual blocking of it. But then you have shield, which is funny because at least with rifle, you can have the argument and say, oh, it doesn't have the vulnerable to block icon. Shield has the vulnerable to block icon, and MEP still said that this isn't supposed to be vulnerable to block. Why? I do not know. They just randomly threw in the animation. Same thing goes for fucking martial arts. MEPS didn't respond on martial arts, but I'm probably going to go through and say that martial arts, even though it has the blockable icon just like shield, probably or whatever, he's going to go through and say it wasn't meant to be blocked. So you're trying to tell me that the developers who created this game have just been throwing in random text, random animation codes inside of the game, and nobody fixed this shit. You're really trying to tell me it's that hard to just take an animation out of or whatever, to take the little vulnerable image from above people's heads. You're trying to tell me that takes a long time, or that's not worth it to go through and fix that. That it's not worth it to go through and properly inform players or whatever that are new to the game on whether or not a combo is actually blockable or not. That you can't just go in and change a piece of text that it took you 7, 8 years to go through and make a change like that. That fucking small. Because it's like, whenever I see things like this or whatever, especially whenever MEPS went through and said like, oh, we'll put it inside of gameplay discussion for the community to reach a consensus or whatever, to reach a consensus on whether or not it's going to be, what's the name of it, or whether or not it should be blockable or not. Literally, for PvE, it doesn't matter because it's not a hard-hitting combo in PvE. There are weapon mastery combos, there are clipping combos that you can do that are faster, that are more viable than what Rifle 5-tap. That was something that is a PvP fix. And with PvP being dead, nobody is going to respond to it inside of the fucking gameplay section. Like, I did it just for the hell of it, but like I already knew there wasn't going to be any responses or whatever outside of like the 2-3 people that are normally posting on fucking legend shit. It's fucking dead. But the fact that this wasn't fixed early on, years ago, by the developers, or that players didn't bring it up back in the fucking hype day of fucking PvP, irritates me a lot. Because at that point, that's I was like, that's two group of people that I'm somewhat disappointed in. Because I'm over here thinking that this shit isn't supposed to be intended. This shit is just blatantly fucking obvious that something is wrong with this fucking system. I mean, since I got heavy into fucking PvP, I been knew that there was a fucking problem with this shit. But I was like, you would think that this, I was just like, that it wouldn't just be animations that are either extra animations or mislabelings of text. I always took it as things that needed to be fixed, but technically I came in testing it like, what, 2015, 2016, and that was originally for content. I technically wasn't even testing power sets until mid-range updates. We were inside of AMs. We weren't even in an era of the game. I wasn't even on test server during an era of the game where weapons were prevalent. Like back during weapon mastery era testing and previously, this should have been something that got brought up at that point in time and addressed. This shouldn't be existing right now. So it's like you have PvP that is broken because weapons are broken. And you have favoritism toward certain combos that would end up breaking PvP from what it's foundationally supposed to be. So say if you have cartwheel kick being stronger than elbow drop, that is not a good situation to have inside of PvP. That is a change you would have to undo. You cannot have bow arrow storm doing the same damage as martial arts smoke bomb in PvE. I mean in PvP. That is not going to work. It's like you have to. I was like, if they're going to be going through and changing all of these weapons, showing showing this favoritism towards certain combos and basically actually breaking the game at this point or whatever, with Doomspin being put in like this with no notes that currently condone or defend its current performance. This is technically, by definition, technically breaking the game or whatever. If they're going to be doing this, all of this would have to be undone. Which means that the longer that we go without a PvP update, not only do we have to worry about getting rid of weapon mastery and superpower for PvP, but then we also have to go through and undo all of the baseline and weapon expert damage fuck-ups that they went through and did for PvE. That's just a huge fucking headache. And it's like, this is going to be a cycle, because if Doomspin got put in, and that's not a bug, if that is indeed intended, that is, like, how can I put this? To define breaking the game, that is implementing elements or changing elements of the game that break foundational structures and formulas that were meant to conserve balance. And as such, you are doing all of those things potentially for the sake of profit, because it makes no sense why Doomspin would have been buffed to this extent at the very, very end. Because it said beforehand, the update beforehand, Doomspin wasn't like this. Doomspin was not like this, and inside of the last update or whatever, like my Excel sheet that had it sitting there was the 31st. This is the 4th, and two-handed is not on this list. There are no notes or whatever. Even assuming this was not or whatever, even assuming this is completely unrelated to Doomspin, two-handed was never addressed in these fucking notes. That just got magically put in at the fucking end. Assuming, what's the name of it? Assuming that got put in, there is no reason, if this was supposed to be intended, for them not to have put this at the beginning of the test server or possibly in the middle if it was left out. There is no reason why it was bad until, or whatever, all the way until live server, and then all of a sudden it gets boosted by double. There is no excuse for that or whatever. The only reason why you will wait until the last minute in order to go through and buff Doomspin was if you wanted everybody to lose hope in weapon mastery, because you had people like, what was his name? You had Rush Steele, who was bitching about weapons. You had Mary Maladine running his stupid ass mouth on the fucking forums. You had Aggro saying stupid shit. Like, just fucking A. Like, just thinking about this shit has my fucking head hurting. Oh my God. Like, you have everybody losing faith inside of weapons. Meanwhile, me and Crappy have already had the shit figured out. We already know how to fucking do competitive / really fucking good damage with fucking weapons. You have everybody losing faith inside of weapons and everybody switching to fucking might base on fucking live server. And then you make it not aware on test server inside of none of the test notes. And then all of a sudden Doomspin's damage is just doubled out of fucking nowhere. It's like, okay. It's like after a whole bunch of might base DPSs, after Earth, Rage, Munitions, Quantum, after they get blown the fuck out by fucking Doomspin from some really good pre DPSs, now they're gonna start bitching. or they're gonna go through and they're gonna spend money in order to or whatever in order to switch to prick in order to go doom spin. And then with this shit, what is it? And then going back to this, in a lot of cases, damage was shifted to earlier in the combos. Whenever you do shit like this breaks PvP. This breaks PvE. This breaks common sense. This completely defies the way that weapons are supposed to be. And that's going to end up creating a fucking problem because later on, Batuba has said the other artifacts inside of the future. Let me actually see if I can actually find it really quick. Batuba had actually made a post a while back talking about prick artifacts. So I'll just go to his profile and just go to his recent post instead of going back and changing the what's the name of it, the search results. Let me just go to recent activity, and then artifacts current drones. Yes, this was supposed to be changed. Philosopher's Stone. That's one of the goals. Here we go. I believe it should have been this post that Batuba made. Here we go. That is one of the goals behind the change to Venomous Dispenser and the buff to overall precision-based attacks, which, technically this is a technicality because it's like, even though you did buff all precision-based attacks, going back to the other fucking post that I had fucking pulled up, wherever the fuck it was what's the name of it, where Autumn went through and said that it was supposed to be shifting it toward the earlier combos. So technically it's the earlier precision based attacks that got huge buffs, and then later combos that probably just got a small buff. So technically this is somewhat kind of vague / misleading. And he says that you don't have to be 100% reliant on the Venom Risk Dispenser to deal good damage. There will be more precision artifacts as well as the recent buffs to some existing artifacts that include precision as to give alternatives. Venomous Dispenser will likely be the go-to for short combos, which is technically what they did with, what's the name of it, with shifting all of the damage to shorter combos, whereas other artifacts or future artifacts will be better for longer sustained combos. Which means that, say for example, if Brawling Home Run doesn't end up getting fucking changed, that's going to be a problem. Martial Arts Sweep Shot, this actually parsed damn near the same as, what's the name of it? This is actually like, how can I put this? This is actually up here. This gap between them actually increases like as you go into the Venomous Dispenser, etc., whatever. Whatever, the gap between them actually ends up, what's the name of it? The gap increases a little bit. But it's like this combo is potentially going to end up being a problem along with some others. The longer the combo is, you're going to end up having a problem. And so some of these others are going to end up coming up out of nowhere and producing a problem. Potentially even Ultra Flurry from fucking Duel. That's going to be a potential problem because technically that itself is a longer combo. Pulse Beam is a longer combo. That might be a problem on fucking single target. That might be a problem inside of PvP if you go through and have longer combos. And at that point, what you're really doing is you're creating temporary flavor of the months, because what they're probably going to do, if I just had to take a guess, they have the short-term combos with the Venomous Dispenser right now, but what they're going to do is later on, inside of one of the other updates, they're either going to go back and they're going to make a broken-ass artifact that's so strong that it makes long combos good, or they're going to go back and they're going to buff the fucking long combos and have the artifact in addition to it in order to make a new flavor of the month. They're going to go back and they're going to shift that damage back to where it was supposed to be originally, and then now you have to go back and you're going to have to use different weapons, and or you're going to have to go through and rank up new artifacts. And this is going to be one of those where instead of being able to use any weapon that you want, instead of being able to use any artifact that you want, you are going to be constantly switching from flavor of the months within Prick. The same way that might-based DPSs switch power sets in order to get particular things that they want at different times, whether a nerf or a buff ends up coming into a power set, precision DPSs are going to be switching artifacts, and we're going to be, what's the name of it, switching weapons that we end up going for every DLC with this. And I'm not for this entire concept at all. This isn't what I signed up for. Whenever I wanted to go through and test weapons, I was testing weapons so that anybody can use whatever weapon that they wanted. Because personally, I wanted to use dual pistols. Cola has loved fucking dual pistols. Guess and I has loved dual pistols. Everybody in the PvP community knows fucking Kazuya Kazuki, at least from PlayStation. Knows fucking Kazuya Kazuki and how he went crazy with pistols back in the day. Everybody wants to use their own weapon. Guess and I use, what's the name of it? Guess and I used to use bow or whatever. You have people that use martial arts, and what's the name that they use martial arts and one-handed already, but it's like sometimes you have some of these offshot weapons. Like I used to use brawling back in the day. I think Cola used to use brawling. Cola uses rifle. He doesn't. I was just like shit. He doesn't. I was just like shit. He doesn't want fucking everybody being fucking rifle and just fucking spamming fucking taps on fucking blockable, because then he doesn't even want to use rifle anymore like that. People that want to use fucking hand blasters because they like a faster type of gameplay. I used to use stab back in the day. In addition to that, it's like then there's technically, even though I don't like it, there are people that like weapon masteries. They want to use those. If weapon masteries are fucking trash or whatever because of how the current system is set up, it does not work. And currently, the funny thing is, let me go back to this, is that this shows the tier list for AoE. But the funny thing is that Doomspin, because it's so high on the tier list for AoE, it actually transfers over into single target. I went on live server yesterday and went through and respect, and Doomspin was outparsing the MA uppercut mastery, both versions of the staff into flip burst mastery or whatever that just got nerfed or whatever. That is now weaker than fucking Doomspin. So you have two single target combos. You have, what's the name of it? You have, what is it? Staff into flip burst and MA uppercut or whatever that are both now nerfed to the point to where Doomspin is less damage than them. But then you also end up having the rifle rotation that hasn't been found plus Flurry, both of them losing to fucking Doomspin on single target as well. That makes no fucking sense. That makes no sense for an AoE combo to do more damage than single target weapon masteries, whether range or fucking melee, especially melee. Even if you wanted to try to make an argument for Doomspin doing more damage on single target than Flurry or whatever, for it to go through and beat two single target weapon mastery combos is bullshit. Especially since they're just as vulnerable to interrupt as fucking Doomspin is, especially Staff, because Staff is nothing but holds, and then it has the range that's going to be vulnerable to counter. And then you have straight single target weapon masteries losing to Doomspin, and then as soon as ads come out, Doomspin is going to get that much more damage because it's AoE instead of single target. That should not be existing. And out of all of the single target combos that I tested, if I remember correctly, Staff and hand blasters were the only one that I could clip with super speed, not iconics, super speed, top of the line clipping or whatever, in order to actually beat Doomspin. Barely. Not even by like a huge amount, but to be able to beat Doomspin, I had to go through and do super speed clipping. While Doomspin requires nothing. You don't even have to be super speed to use fucking Doomspin and get incredible numbers, but obviously, if you're not super speed, you're going to take a huge fucking DPS increase. It's like losing phase dodge on Doomspin doesn't mean that much, but losing Whirling Dervish and Vortex Trap and phase dodge is going to mean a lot whenever you're talking about a regular hybrid play style. That's going to be a considerable DPS drop. So not only do you have Doomspin smoking everything on AoE baseline by 30-40% plus, but then you also have two-handed Doomspin that is shitting on single target. Like that is not okay. And it's like, I'm not for sure if people know this about me. People close to me already know that I fucking know this, but it's like, I know that I'm toxic. I know that mean, that I am aggressive, that I am argumentative, etc. I already know these things, and I am perfectly fine with them, because to be honest, like, I need to vent my emotions with as much shit as I deal with. But it's like, how can I put this? whenever I go to test, shit like this is not what I aim for. This is not why I installed test server. This is not why I spend 20 plus hours every patch going through and retesting weapons and going back and re-getting numbers and paying attention to detail. This is not what I signed up for. Like, I signed up to make weapons balanced. This is the same reason why Crappy goes through and tests natures and elec along with the weapons. This is the same reason why Mighty did testing. It's why Fatal and Charm did celestial testing. It's why Chill does testing. Like, all of us have power sets or playstyles that we all care about, that we want to make sure are viable. We want to make sure that everybody can do what they want to do and that people can have fun and enjoy the game. Shit like this is how you just foundationally break and undo all of the work that somebody has put in. That's I would just say, I was like, I didn't sign up to do hours and hours of weapon testing to have some weapon combo come out of the blue and just shit on everything. To have certain combos overnight be buffed and break a balance that once existed, like explosive shot. That was not that far ahead of everything else. If it would have been just slightly nerfed like what it was supposed to be at that 10% for that first toss, that would have been perfectly in line with all of the other ones. The only one that would have edged out would have been the shield weapon mastery, and that is literally the longest combo out of all of them, which has all sorts of drawbacks in terms of not only do you have more chances to get interrupted, but more than likely you're also going to have because you have to wait until you get to the very, very end of it, you're going to have, or the ad's going to die before you get to the end of that weapon mastery combo, or the ad's going to have moved before you get to the end of that weapon mastery combo, because going through and trying to kite while trying to get to that weapon mastery is annoying. You want to be stationary whenever you do that weapon mastery combo. So it's like, even though it parsed higher than the other weapon mastery combos, it had its trade-offs or whatever that were decent, and it's not like Doomspin where fucking it's parsing like 30-40% higher than the other weapon mastery combos. It wasn't crazy like that, but it's like all the short ones, Aerostorm, both versions of explosive shot, they would have all been close together. That would have been balanced, and you could have used any of those weapons that you wanted for ranged AoE, and now that's gone because of double throw. Like, having shit like that just completely undoes everything that we aim for, everything that we tested in order to try to get. Especially like I said, like, I wanted to use a whole bunch of different weapons. Clipping, I was having fun on test server. Mims was having fun on test server. Crappy was having fun a little bit even. Freaking, he was going through and fucking, like, like, I had set up my fucking bot on test server and Crappy was just going in for fucking hours with fucking elec, with fucking hybrid. He was somewhat enjoying himself. Like, but then you have shit like Staff, which is like one of Crappy's favorite fucking weapons because of its fucking, what's the name of it? Because of its AoE, like, what's the name of it? Its hit radius or whatever, it being 360. Like, that's one of his favorite combos. And to see it shit on, and then we bring it up, and it still doesn't get buffed, but then out of nowhere, Doomspin gets doubled. Like, that's disheartening. That's fucking breaking. That's not okay. Especially since it's not like we wanted Downward Smash to be fucking broken, but right now it's just bottom line pathetic. Like, that's not okay. And then just or whatever, and then just the icing on the cake is like this entire system is just broken foundationally, but yet some of this shit is supposed to be intended, like Doomspin. And then you have people like, who was it, Kimon, and I think one or two other people inside of the thread trying to defend two-handed. There is no defending this. And that irritates the fuck out of me for this community. Because as toxic as I am, as aggressive as I am, as argumentative as I am, I don't take away other people's right to balance inside of the game. I'm not going to say, like, how can I put this? I'm not going to be rage and say, no, sorcery is fucking fine, or no, rage is fine, berserk doesn't need to get nerfed, or my melee parsers aren't that fucking strong. Like, I'm not gonna sit there and fucking lie on rage DPS just so sorcery stays like shit. Like, I'm not going to go through and have my weapon be broken as shit, and somebody else who has a lesser weapon asks for me to get nerfed down to their or whatever, to get nerfed down to them, and then me say, well, no, my shit is fine. Everybody else needs to be brought up to me. Like, I don't think people realize if if the other two-handed combos and weapons went up to where Doomspin is at, if that damage standard got met as a consistent, if Doomspin became a baseline in terms of where it's performing now, that is going to be a huge problem. That means weapons will literally be shitting on Earth and Rage. Might base will be fucked if Doomspin becomes a baseline. Technically, you're already fucked from Doomspin, but especially if I can do it with other combos that are less vulnerable to interrupt, that are quicker combos so I don't lose as much damage whenever I get interrupted. Oh, you're hit at that point. It's over at that point. Like, like it doesn't, it doesn't work. You can't set something that's broken, blatantly broken at that, as a standard, because then the entire playstyle becomes broken. And I know some people want precision to be broken. I want precision to be above might, and I want it to be above, well, how can I put this? Yeah, I want precision to be above might because it technically requires a higher skill cap. There's no clipping in most might-based powers. Yes, you have Celestial, yes, you have Hard Light, but most people don't play those powers. As most people are Munisons and Quantum, which don't do shit. There's no skill cap to those. If I am ranged, I should be doing more damage than those. If somebody is melee and they're spamming Jackhammer while I'm super speed clipping short combos and burning through just as much, if not more power than them, I should be doing more damage. If I have a more complicated rotation, I should be doing more damage than what they are. That's how I was like, that's how I personally feel. And that is a concept that is applicable inside of certain games. That's not like just my personal philosophy that's just out of the fucking blue. But it's like, there is no defending this. And as such, I get irritated anytime I even see this. Anytime I look at my gear, anytime I look at my artifacts, anytime I see or hear about PvP, like a vein just comes in the back of my head that's just so big and irritated because everything is just broken. Everything is unbalanced. Everything is not working the way that it's supposed to be. And I can't have fun like this. I'm not going to do PvE. The content was already boring. / not hard. And then you go into PvP and it's broken, spammable, not fun. I can't even go into fucking weapons only inside of PvP. I can't even go inside of legends inside of PvE anymore because I got people that want to run fucking Harley, that want to run steel and just tap the shit out of me with two-handed. I just want to spam flips and just keep dodging all the BBs that you do. Because you have Two Faces and Green Lanterns or whatever that are just going to spam 5-tap. Like, PvP is just a fucking cheese fest. Either you cheese or you lose. Like, that's pretty much it. Either you cheese in some way, shape, or form. That's either an unblockable combo or something that does more damage than it's supposed to. But at the highest level, it is cheese or you will die. That's not fun at all. That's not fun. That's not the way that the game should be. And if shit like this is being done on purpose, if you are skewing weapon balance and ruining formulas that were put in place for a reason, if you are going through and making weapon combos stronger than what they are supposed to be, than what is normally what you already define as an unacceptable level of damage, it's just not worth it. I'm not interested in playing the PvE of this game. I'm not interested in playing the PvP aspect of this game. If you see me online, I'm literally just going to be just running the broker. That's it. I'm going to be running the broker or I'm going to be out farming. That's it. I'm not running content. I'm not helping with any feats. I'm not doing PvP. I'm not going to help you queue for shit. Just act like I'm not even there. Like, I just want to go ghost and just make money in peace. Like, I'm not dealing with this system because after seeing how messed up this isn't worth it. Because I was already stressed out going through and doing all of this amount of testing, going through and getting all of these numbers right, having to go back and double check, having to go through and get the footage, but then it also becomes stressing when you have fucking idiots on the forums saying stupid shit that you have to go through and argue with in order to try to make sure that they don't get weapons buffed to just basically just blatantly be fucking broken. Because if they went through and they buffed some of these combos, they would be hitting harder than what they are already. They are already hitting really, really fucking hard. If they hit even harder, it's going to be that much worse. Now, yeah, some of the fucking melee combos needed to get buffed, and I didn't argue with those. But at the same time, most people were just going through and testing weapon mastery combos. They weren't testing regular combos, regular clipping, or whatever. They weren't testing the more common ones. They were going through and using shit like bow into magnum round on fucking AoE and saying, oh, magnum round mastery should be doing as much as what arrow storm should be doing. And half of the goddamn combo is fucking single target. Like, just saying stupid shit sometimes and just doing stupid testing parameters. I have the testing aspect that is already tiring and long and troublesome. And then I have the feedback section where I'm arguing with other players and I'm arguing with the fucking developers, trying to fucking get them to respond to some shit so I can try to understand what the fuck we're supposed to be doing here. I have deadlines. I have league mates and other people asking me for help with loadouts, asking for, hey, what's going to be the OP weapon? What artifact should I have? Yo, what do you think about this setup? Yo, what do you think about the content or whatever? Do you think I should run this inside of this setup? Like, I was like, it's fucking draining. And it's like, having to go through and do so many different things, having so many different responsibilities, so to speak, like, it's draining, but I liked it because at least inside of my head, it would have been rewarding. If I would have went through and did all of that, and then weapons would have been balanced or whatever, I would have been able to go in, use dual pistols or whatever other weapon combo I wanted to inside of content, whether it was melee or range, what have you. If I would have been able to do slightly better inside of PvP and Iconics or something along those lines, if Legends would have been in a slightly better state than what it was beforehand. Like, even if things weren't perfect, if things were reasonable progression, if things were a reasonable progression forward, I would have been happy. But Doomspin, along with some of the other changes that weren't inside of the notes, completely fucked that over. There's no point in having 4, 5, 6 weapon combos that all perform near each other at an acceptable level, and then you just have one weapon that's above all of those that's significantly easier. Everybody's just going to end up going to the top. Nobody's going to have the variety that they have. If people wanted to do less than average damage beforehand, they already had options before we even had this update. Smoke Bomb was the highest damage that we had, and the funny part is that even though Smoke Bomb was an outlier, at least Smoke Bomb technically still took skill, because just baseline Smoke Bomb wasn't strong. That wasn't what you could end up competing with Earth and Rage somewhat or whatever. That wasn't what you were doing. You had to do super speed clipping with it. And if you fucked up super speed clipping, you whiffed the Smoke Bomb damage entirely. If you're losing, if you're not able to do Doomspin properly from two-handed, I'm not going to tell you that you should uninstall the game, but you should probably go to another role. Like, that is literally one of the easiest combos to do in the game, and there's no clipping involved at all from it. It is not a hard combo to do. And as such, to be such an easy combo and to do this amount of damage, it makes me go back and question it makes me go through and question the intentions of this game, because somebody has to be making this call. I don't know if it's Autumn. I don't know if it's Aver. I don't know if it's somebody else above their fucking pay grade, but somebody in the chain of command is making these decisions and is fucking the game over. And it's probably more than likely doing it for profit. And I don't want anything to do with it. I'm not going to go out of my time to do weapon testing. I'm not going to go out of my time to keep the community updated. I'm not going to go out of my time or whatever, go out of my fucking mental state, my mental health, and deal with all of the flack that we end up getting as a tester. I'm not going to deal with all of the arguments that I get into on the forums trying to fucking disprove idiots or whatever. I'm not going to deal with everything. And also going through and having to make fucking YouTube videos just so people can fucking spread it. So I don't have to keep fucking repeating myself in game, having to go through and upload footage in addition to that, which is a pain because I don't have a fucking good laptop, which means I have to go through, lower my resolution, record footage, go into editing software, zoom it back in, edit out the extra shit, then go through and render it on a slow ass computer. So that's fucking a pain in the ass in and of itself. Like, I'm not going to go through all of that for no reason. I was just like, it's just too much. But, like, everything that's wrong with weapons, especially in the direction that we're going, I don't see it getting fixed anytime soon. It's going to at least be 2-3 years or whatever. This is not going to get fixed anytime soon. It's not. There's no way to, I was just like, there's no way to uncorrect this, which means that for the next 2-3 years, this game is not going to be fun for me, for a person like me, for in PvE or PvP. And as such, the only time you may see me come back is maybe for SM, because I have another PSN that has in-game CR, in-game artifacts that I can hop on and I can rank up if I want to. But I'm not just gonna go through and spend $100 to go through and rank up that account for no goddamn reason. But if I can make my money back from SM, then yeah, I'm gonna go through and I'm gonna do it. But even SM, depending on how they do it, I may not even run that, because right now I'm already making 300, 400, 500 mil a day, depending on how many hours I put in. There's no reason for me to go through and do that if for some reason, for various reasons, they decide to shit on the drop rate of the rare drops. I was just like, if I'm going to spend all day and only get like one rare drop after stressing myself out inside of SM all day, not going to be worth it. Like, it has to be like this time where I can probably try to at least line up maybe 2, maybe 3 a day plus the fucking data chips so I can make my money back and it'll scale with inflation inside of the game. It has to be worth it, because even if I do come back for SM, I'm not going to be going for around 30. I'm literally just doing money for SM. Because between the weapons being broken, along with the developers being, well, actually, take that back. The first SM back, actually, I'll take that back. First SM back, technically, I would be going for 30 just to prove a point. I have 1 point that I want to make to fucking mail bars that I'll go through and run SM for just to go through and piss him off. And then after that, I will literally just be running just for money. After I prove a point, then I'll go through and just run for money and I won't be doing SM anymore or whatever. So if there's any SMs after this next one or whatever, after the next one, I'm not going to be a part of those. After I end up doing round 30 and whatever inside of the first group of the next SM, I'm not going to be running it anymore. I'm not going to be taking payment in order to carry people up into the higher rounds. I'm not doing it. I'm just farming it. I'm proving a point and then I'm going back to my money. That's it. But that's my current status. And with that, I'm going to go ahead and end this video because I've been talking for way too long.